Hi, everyone. This is Tanisha Patterson Brown, founder and CEO of Definitive Sports Group, and we are here with our DSG Power Summit and our Financial Literacy Series. So today I'm here with Chris and Derek, and they're joining me to talk about financial literacy. Now, I know that sounds scary, but in reality, it's really not. If you break it down and take your time, you'll be able to understand fully what you can do to be successful personally and in business. Hi, Chris. Hi, Derek.
Hey.
How's it going?
Can you please introduce yourself to everyone and let them know what you do?
Sure. So I'll start. My name's Chris Ogletree. I'm a financial advisor. All that means is I just help people to grow and build their wealth, right? And so it's just helping them to understand where are some of the places we can put money to make it grow, but also make it grow where the majority of the money comes back to you and doesn't go to Uncle Sam in the form of taxes. So it could be around investment planning, possibly retirement planning, anything in between with any of that. So it's a little bit about me and what we do.
Awesome. And my name is Derek Murray. I'm a CFP, which is a certified financial planner. And I mean, the things that we do for our clients, it just really stretches, right? You know, sometimes we're helping clients build an investment portfolio. Sometimes we're helping them refinance their home. So financial planning is really meant to do that, is help our clients plan out their financial lives from A to Z.
So you say financial planning, everyone thinks about stocks and bonds, right? No one really thinks about the nitty gritty. And most people assume that they don't need a financial planner. Can you, either Chris or Derek, give me an example of like a traditional versus non-traditional plan?
I can jump in with that question. So,
okay.
Yeah, I think I don't really think there is a such thing as a traditional plan. And the reason I say that is because the planning that we do for our clients is all custom. So it's really depending on where they are. And whether I have a client, as I mentioned, who, let's say they own a business or they're investing into real estate. There's some different things that we may want to do for them in terms of how they build out their investment. Some of the insurances and different things they may need for their business or their property. Versus if we have a client who's just a W-2 employee and an executive at a company, there's different planning to do with them. So when we say financial planning, it is something that's dynamic, right? And the biggest catalyst is who we're talking to and the position they're in and really what their goals are to be able to really build out a financial plan that helps them specifically.
So you said something that it was a trigger for me, right? Because most people assume that you have to have a certain amount of net worth, a certain amount of income in order for them to even talk to a financial advisor. One thing you said was, or to have their own business in order to come in millions of dollars. I don't need a financial advisor to have millions of dollars, right? But you said you have a client that is a W-2 employee, but they're still taking the time to speak to you to learn about, how can I plan for the future? So can you give me, just some feedback on why you feel most people are not coming to financial advisors if they're not millionaires?
Right. Well, I think the reason that in terms of that hesitation of coming to a financial advisor could potentially be those insecurities of they're not where they think they should be, or they're not in a position. We all know Instagram shows the highlights. They're not in the position that they actually present themselves to be in. So to really expose under the hood, if you will, in terms of their finances, sometimes that causes the hesitation. Or sometimes folks, like you said, they think, oh, until I get $1 million or until I get 500,000, I don't need a financial advisor. Which I would say both of those things are reasons are incorrect. Is hey, that's part of the reason why when you do want to have a financial advisor, someone that you trust, that you can be open and honest with, Just like you go to the doctor, you want a doctor that you trust and can be open and honest with, because the only way that we can help is if we're able to really put everything on the table and diagnose what the potential issue is. Now, as it relates to being ready or getting to a certain point to having a financial advisor, most financial advisors, it doesn't cost you anything to have an initial consultation, right? So I always tell folks, hey, reach out and just connect with someone. At least have an initial consultation to figure out, are they the right fit? Or, hey, are there some things that they can help you with along your way? I mean, one of the things with Chris and I, in terms of meeting some people, sometimes they aren't in a position where it makes sense for them to work directly with us, but we still give them advice and different things that they can do to help build that up.
Mm-hmm.
I'd add just on that, I think another big issue or thing to think about is really there have been some people that have broken trust previously. And so I think that's just a big thing is, does your advisor connect with you? Like, can you find the common ground? Do y'all have a lot of commonalities or things that y'all can come together on that you can trust him or her? So I think trust is really just a big factor within that. And then in terms of just being ready, I think about it as like, you know, somebody shouldn't wait until they get to the NFL to get a trainer, right? Mm-hmm. No, you start off early when you're young. You get a trainer and you get better and better by going through a lot of different skills and different things like that. And then ultimately you can make it to the NFL, right? So it's kind of the same way is you start working with an advisor and then you can make it to the big leagues because you started that foundation off, right? So I think I like to use that analogy whenever we're thinking about, is somebody really ready?
And I like that analogy, right? Because I think that sometimes people assume that you have to be reactive, right? Mm-hmm. So they're like, oh, I want to go to a financial advisor now because I'm being reactive. But you can make, in theory, you can be a millionaire. Your business can come in and make millions of dollars and your bottom line is $2,000, right? And you're trying to figure out, how did I get from making $2 million in revenue and only having a net income of $2,000, right? And also the value versus like writing things off on your business, because everybody wants to write everything off, right? Everyone writes. But as an entrepreneur, and I know that you guys can give some feedback on this, as an entrepreneur, it's hard if you're writing everything off. So then what is really your bottom line when you're trying to make moves and financial moves? So can you give some feedback on the benefits of like writing things off essentially and having and showing at the end, right, that you have a certain profit at the end of the year?
Yeah. So Chris and I mean, we specialize working with entrepreneurs, business owners, right? And the athletes that we work with, that's what we call them. Hey, you're an entrepreneur, you are a business owner, right? So that's what you are. So that's where we specialize. So to your point, yes, everybody wants to figure out the ways to deduct, right? We don't want to pay taxes, which again, we don't blame them because we don't want to pay taxes either. But there are some pros and cons to that, right? To saying, hey, I just want to shelter everything underneath my business. But if some examples, you may try and look to get some business credit or a business line of credit or a business expansion loan. And then at that point, they go and look underneath the hood, if you will, in terms of those financial reporting documents, and you're not showing what you need to show. You're not showing that profitability, so you won't get approved for those things. And then when it comes to some investments and just other things that you can do, it will limit you. Even from an insurance side, sometimes it'll limit you if you're just deducting everything and not really showing any level of profit from your business. Some levels of insurance and things that you won't be able to get approved for, whether it's business insurance, liability insurance, disability insurance, or things like that. So when we talk to clients and say, yes, we're on your side, we absolutely want to figure out how we can pay the least amount in taxes, but we also make sure we shed light on, hey, these are some of the byproducts of doing that. So we want to figure out when is the right timing. The other thing just popped in my head as we're thinking of that actually talked with a client with last week is they're looking to purchase a property, right? So we know going through all of that due diligence with the mortgage officers of what you're showing and how profitable you are in terms of that bottom line will go into what you can get approved on. So just really weighing those pros and cons.
So what it sounds like to me, right? I always equate myself and what I do as being a coach, right?
Yep.
A lot of times people just assume that, you know, they call lawyers at the end, right? They call lawyers when something bad happens, right? But you really need to call us before, because we can tell you this is what you need to be. You need to be proactive and doing things so that and there will be risks that come up. There will be, you know, things that appear, but you will be prepared and have those tools to, you know, battle those and more effectively. When you're talking about like sheltering money and getting lines of credit, one of the biggest things that I saw when I first was coming out was players spending cash on everything, right? Now, one thing that I love that Snoop Dogg said, you know, he's like, I never paid cash, and even Shaquille O'Neal lives by this, right? For like depreciating things that depreciate very quickly. It's like he always would just charge, and he's like, that was crazy. I shouldn't have done that. But for things that are like businesses and houses and all of those things that you are putting on your business, those things you shouldn't pay outright cash, right? So I see players invest in businesses and they'll give these huge lump sums of money, and the people have no like plan of how they're going to get paid back. Oh, we're going to sue this sexual, and then you know the money is just going to flow in. Do you have some insight, Chris, you know, on like telling people, and not just players but people in general, when you're investing, what is the best way for that you can provide information as how they should invest?
Yeah, I think ultimately it comes down to leverage. So in all that we do, we want to help people really to create leverage. And so the way that we do that is use your cash as a way to create leverage to get another account and then use that account to pay for it, right? And what that allows you to do is really make money while you're still spending money to some degree. All right, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that.
Now you got to explain that now. You said make money while you're still spending money. Like, can you elaborate just a little bit on that?
Yeah, so just one example, and there's several, but one example could be something called asset-backed lending, right? Asset-backed lending. And so basically you can have, let's say you got $1 million in an investment account. You can use that investment account to get a line of credit from a bank or somewhere else. Right? And instead of doing let's say you need to buy a property or something, instead of using your actual investments, you just use the line of credit, right? And you take the money from the line of credit. Let your investment still make money, because you may make 10, 15, 20% in your investments, and it's only going to cost you maybe 3% to borrow money from the line of credit. And so you're able to do that, and you're still able to net maybe 17% while you still spent money on the investment, and then you make your money back, and then you pay the line of credit off.
And see, here's the thing with that, right? It's understanding. And see, that is one of the things that, you know, we talked about this. I'm super candid about, you know, recommending financial advisors. I'm very particular about who I recommend, especially to my clients, because you sitting here and explaining that, right? Most financial advisors are not going to explain that. They're not going to take the time to explain that to an athlete or an entrepreneur and say, hey, this is what you can do, but these are the pros and cons of that. And then understanding fundamentally, like, you don't want to use all your cash, because guess what? Cash is always king, but also credit, you know, as well. Because if you don't have good credit, I don't care how much money you have over here, because that money keeps dwindling down. You know, so I appreciate you taking that and just acknowledging, like, hey, this is an option, and these are the percentages roughly. You know, you're just giving examples of what are the pros and cons of that. I will say, you know, a lot of times people are afraid. They're afraid to invest. They want to hold on, because we've been taught for so long to put money in a savings account and just let it just sit there and collect your little percentage, right? And understanding that the greater the risk, the greater the reward. when you do your research and when you have understanding, right? Is that,
Yeah.
I mean, and I want you guys to give me feedback on what you feel like are the most successful investments that you've seen in your clients.
Yeah. So one thing that you mentioned, you talk about risk, right? And this also goes back to that understanding of, I think one of Chris and I's greatest strengths is we see ourselves as somewhat as teachers, right? We want our clients to understand, and one good thing that we can do, we can take the things that are very complex and break it down to elementary level, right? So one of the things one of the opportunities to doing that is talking about risk, right? Because the reason, as you mentioned, we meet clients and they just got money sitting into their bank accounts, not earning anything, losing to inflation, is because they really don't understand what the risk is. And there is an irrational thought that, hey, if I put this money in the investment account, that there's a risk that I can lose it all, right? Which with proper investing and proper asset allocation, proper diversification, there is no risk of losing it all, right? And as we think about how we invest correctly, and we think about how we properly time our clients in investments, because that's one of the other things that people get when they get into trouble, is that they pull the money out of their investments at bad times. So one of the things we always talk to our clients about, hey, what money do we want to access and when can we access it? But to go even more specific in terms
I have
of your
one question though.
okay, well,
Can
go
you
ahead.
give me some, because when you say pull it out at bad times, can you elaborate on what is an example of a bad time?
Yep. So when we talk about investing into the stock market, we don't want to do it on a short-term basis to where, hey, we're going to put money in and then take it out in 6 months, right? Because when you think about the stock market, if you look at the historical trends of the stock market, the shorter the time frame, the more volatility it is.
Okay.
Right. So it's more volatile in the short time frames versus if you look at 1 year averages versus 3 year averages, 5 year averages, 10 year averages, the longer the average, the smoother that line gets. Right. So what we mean by taking the market out in a bad time is a great example is if we go back to March or April of 2020, when the market nosedived, right? So the start of the pandemic, things shut down. Most businesses couldn't operate. So the stock market nosedived. You were down some of your accounts 26, 27, 30%, depending on how aggressive you were. And if you took your money out of the investment at that time, then you would have lost, right? So when we say take your money out of the market at a bad time, that's if the market is down within a negative market decline. But if in 2020 you kept your money in, by November you were up 16%, right? So when you talk about market timing, it's not about trying to time and buy stocks at different times. It's more about timing when and how you want to be able to access your money, which goes back to Chris' point of one of the strategies of doing asset-based lending.
And so I guess to kind of go off of that, right? You know, a lot of people are afraid of stocks and bonds. Like they're afraid of that because they're saying, I don't, and it's not, I think the fear comes from a lack of understanding, right? Or just a lack of interest. Like, I'm not interested in stocks. That's not my jam, right? So because that's not my jam, I'm like, I'm good, you know, but I think people assume automatically that if they have a financial advisor, then that's all that you guys do. You're not advising them on real estate. You're not advising them on, you know, business structures, what business makes sense. You know, you're not advising them on, you know, other investments that they could potentially make outside of stocks. And so I think, you know, having some, you know, you guys saying, hey, there are other ways that you can make money, other ways that you can take the money that you're making today to make it more profitable for you and earn money for your future. I do have a question about estates, right?
Okay. Well,
Go ahead.
let me mention, let me make a quick just kind of statement on what you mentioned, because I think the part of the reason, number one, I think too many times people go towards the or and not the and, right? It's like, hey, should I invest in the stock market or should I invest in real estate? The answer is a combination. The answer is the and, right? We want to build a diversified portfolio. We want to have business that we're running and we're investing in. We want to have real estate that we're running and we're investing in. We want to invest in the stock market. We want to have insurance. We want to have other non-tangible assets that are potential investments, right? Because that's how you minimize your risk. Then the last thing I'll mention, just when you said stock market, I think one of the reasons people don't connect with the stock market is because it's stock market, right? Who knows what the stock market is? But what we break it down is the stock market is basically companies, right? Stocks are companies. So instead of saying stock market, if you say the company market, right? If you say, hey, I want to invest in a bunch of different companies, that's really what you're doing. You're not investing in stocks. You're actually just investing in companies.
I like that. Because what is your take on this?
Yeah, I think, you know, just kind of going back to the risk part, I think that a lot of times people think about the risk of investing, and this doesn't have to do, it could be in the stock market or it could be in other things. But I think about what's the risk of not doing that, right? So, for instance, the risk of having all of your money in cash, there's a lot of risk in that. People don't really think about it like that, right? The risk in having all your money in cash is every year you're actually losing money due to inflation, right? So if you've got, let's just say 100,000 in a checking account, next year it's only worth $97,000 on a good year, right? A lot of times it's, if you look at it this year, it would only be worth $93,000 the following year because inflation is at like 6 or 7%. So that's a risk just in and of itself by just sitting in a savings account. So just what was going through my mind is there are a lot of risks even in just keeping money in cash that we don't think about. We just think about the other side.
And talking about that risk point, right, before I move on to talking about estate planning, I find it, especially in players' careers, whether they're younger or older, it doesn't matter. They're more apt to taking a risk with a family member in their business or a friend, their homeboy that's been their friend since, high school or whatever, and investing in their business than saying, you know what, I want to invest, take my money and invest it in, like you said, businesses, right? Or in something that's already proven to be successful, and then you just being a part of it. Do you have any experience with people who are doing it? I know in my career, it happens all the time. Like, but what is your cousin talking about? What is their plan?
Yeah.
What is their plan of how they're going to pay you all this money back, right? Do you guys have any experience with that?
Working with athletes, we have a lot of experience with that. Too much than we would actually want. And really our advice, I think similar to conversations you may have had, is really look at this as a business, not as a favor, right? Are you really looking at this as a business opportunity? Because most cases they aren't, right? Because if you look at a business opportunity, you'll see the holes and you'll see, hey, this doesn't really make sense. A lot of times people are just looking at it, hey, as a favor to family member or friend. I want to put my friends on, put the people around me on, which is okay, but there's a right way of doing it and there's a wrong way of doing it. But then the other thing is, it's not an awful thing if you are doing it as a favor, but if you are, understand and only do it if your expectations of not getting any of that money back are there and you're okay with that, right? And if that is the case, then by all means.
And so therein lies where the legal aspect comes in, right? If you're gifting, understanding the difference between you giving a gift and the tax ramifications that come along with the gift tax, versus you actually investing in a business and being able to write that off. Like, I invested in this LLC, and therefore I am able to, at the end of the year, say I lost 200,000. I hope they didn't lose 200,000, but we're just going to say that. I lost $200,000. How can I offset that from my income that I've made? Even if it's league minimum, if you made, $700,000 or whatever, if you're a veteran guy. So understanding those principles is another reason why they should talk to a financial advisor, a knowledgeable financial advisor, not a financial advisor that's just trying to take advantage of them, because that's one thing that I'm very passionate about, is not having players being taken advantage of by financial advisors who just want to collect that 1%, right? They just want to collect their percentage, which is a lot when a player is making $10 million a year. It's a lot. So, what I guess I want to kind of go into estate planning, because this is a passion project for me right now. Talking about estate planning, because a lot of times people, especially younger people, don't want to talk about the end, right? They don't want to be in it. And you guys obviously you deal with this all the time with people talking about retirement. They don't want to talk about being old, because that just seems so far, right? For them, what experience or just advice that you guys have, for people who are even non-athletes, entrepreneurs, like, how do you plan for the future, for generations to come? Because isn't that what it's all about, right? Setting up the future generations to be greater than what you are.
Yeah, I think it's really just being proactive. If you can figure out how to do some things on the front end, you're just going to save yourself so much trouble and headache on the back end. We've just found that, if there is no type of estate planning, when people hear that, they think of like death or something that's just so morbid. But everybody has an estate. You can have 2 pennies in your bank account, and like when you pass, they're going to consider something as your estate. So it's not that somebody has to have a certain amount. It's just that if you want to avoid certain headaches and really save a lot of money down the line, you want to think about a lot of this stuff on the front end. And so we coordinate, like, we're not actual attorneys where we draw up legal documents, but we help clients quarterback their entire plan, right? So where we help them with the funding of it, and then we help them to get set up with attorneys that actually draw up the legal documents and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Derek, do we have any advice on estate planning or just preparing for the future?
Right. Well, yeah, I think, like you said, a lot of times people's hesitation or just turn off with estate planning, say, yeah, I'm young, I got plenty of time to do that. But one thing, like, number one, as Chris said, we want to be proactive. And then number two, we also want to think with the end goal in mind, right? Like you said, if the end goal is building wealth and being able to create a financial life to where you have the freedom to do the things that you want to do, and then also turn that and create generational wealth, if that is the end goal, then absolutely we need to look at the opportunities of, hey, what type of estate planning we need to do today for that future end goal, because things could happen to where you never get there. Or how do you put yourself in a position to safeguard those goals? But then also, as you just think about security and you just think about risk and being able to safeguard your assets, right? Especially with our athletes, or especially just with our clients in terms of high income earners or whoever they may be. Chris and I also work with a good amount of doctors. Doctors is one of the highest professions in terms of who gets sued every year, right? Because we talk to a doctor get in the car accident, and they get out of the car with that white coat on, the neck's hurting immediately, right? So
yeah,
when you talk about protection of assets and legal and being able to separate your business entities and your home and different things like that, that's some of the level of estate planning that, as Chris mentioned, we advise our clients to seek counsel on with attorneys and be able to help facilitate that process.
I will always say, in any plan of life, if you're trying to be progressive at all, right? That you need a team, a quality team, but you need a team. You need an attorney on this. Every single person who is doing anything in business or just, in brand, whatever, need an attorney on their team that's on the team, on call all the time. Because if you don't have that and you're trying to chase it down after the fact, you're going to spend a lot more money. And you're going to also spend a lot of time wasting time. And I think it's also important to have a financial person on your team, and a great CPA. That's like, wow. I mean, I can only just, when you find somebody, that is a great CPA. And I also believe, having, just a full insurance person, because we've mentioned insurance several times. That's a part of financial planning, because a lot of people miss that, right? Especially businesses that are like mom and pop businesses, or they create their own brands. They just automatically assume they don't need insurance, which is crazy to me, because I'm like, you really have to have some level of risk, acknowledging that you can get sued. Somebody could slip and fall, somebody could trip on the sidewalk. Anything, food poisoning, whatever there may be, it's all of these things that can be, you can be sued for. But I think about creating that team, creating and acknowledging that you need that. And it's okay to be vulnerable, right? It's okay to tell the truth, because you got to tell the truth. See, people tell me the truth and they try to hide it, but then it's like, it always comes out because I need to know everything, right? And you guys are saying the same thing. You got to tell me what's really going on. Don't hide this account over here or pretend like it's something over here, and it's okay. I just want to ask you guys, there's no judgment zone, right?
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, it's gotta be like, I mean, if not, you're not going to be able to help. It's like, if somebody goes to the doctor and their stomach is hurting, but they tell them it's really my arm, like the doctor can't really diagnose them, right? So we don't sit down with people to judge it all. It's just to figure out how we can help.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I think that just goes into the trust, right? Of being able to work with someone that you trust, that number one, you believe they have your best interest at heart, right? Because no, there isn't any judgment from us to our clients, but there is also accountability from us to our clients, because that's part of of what we do. I mean, we're not working with someone if they're just completely just not listening, blowing money, and it's just not making sense, and the partnership doesn't work and we can't hold them accountable, then it just nothing works.
But see,
right?
you said something right there, right? Mm-hmm. That's important. The partnership. Mm-hmm. That's a key word, because it's not that you're an employee, right? Because you're not. You're a partner in trying to see their success. And so I think sometimes people confuse that and they say, well, these are my employees. And yes, you have people on your team as partners, because when you think of it in that aspect, then everybody's trying to get to the same goal. Everybody's trying to win, right? Everybody's trying to get to whatever that end game is. So I like that partnership. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, one thing, Chris and I mean, we tell clients when we do form that partnership is that we both reserve the right to fire each other, right?
That part.
Our team, if we're not doing the things that you expect of us, and we're not providing world-class service like we feel we will, then we deserve to be fired. But then same thing, and we have fired clients if they're not being respectful, or if they're not doing the things that they said they will do to make the partnership work. So absolutely, it's definitely.
Well, and I think that goes to the concept, the thought process, the maturity element, right? You're not a babysitter. So you're not here to say, no, don't spend that. No, don't move the money here. That's not your job. Because if someone is coming to you, they're in a headspace of, I want to not only protect what I have, but I want to grow what I have and get to a point where I'm wealthy and not rich. It's easy to be rich, but to be wealthy is where you are passively sitting and making money without doing. That's my definition of being wealthy, right? And that's my goal of being wealthy. I'm trying to be on Oprah status for like a little bit more, just a little bump. Where she's passively making, I think it was something crazy, like $1 million a minute or something crazy. It's like she sits and exists, and in her existence, she's making that. And I know everybody's not going to be on that level, right? But to passively make money, that's the goal, where you're not working all your life. I like it.
Yeah,
I like the partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I think going back to, as we talk about beginning with the end goal in mind, right? Whether we're talking to one of our successful business owner clients or we're talking to an athlete as well, it's like, hey, at some point, the reason we want to save, the reason we want to invest is because we want to switch from our lifestyle being funded by our sweat equity, right? By our actual actions and working income to our lifestyle being funded by our unearned income, right? We want our assets at some point to fund our lifestyle, whether that is a business or a franchise that's running itself, whether that is your investment portfolio or insurance opportunities or real estate, or in most cases, what we try and build is a combination of all of those things.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one other thing that always is a trigger for me, right, is that anytime I plan with a client, I always say, what's your end game, right? Because there's always the end game. Like, yeah, you want to build this business, you want to create all this stuff, you want to be really successful, and then what? Is your plan to sell the business or to become a minority stake owner so then you can have more money to go do what's the next step? And it's okay, to put something down and pick it back up again when it's better, when the timing is better. Because you talk about timing a lot, and I think people feel like if they don't have it all together or it's not all working out right then somehow, some way, the level of patience is gone, right? So I guess, do you agree in a sense of that patience is required when you're trying to build wealth?
Man, I think one of our issues is we live in this social media society and we see all these overnight successes, right? We see folks go from zero to just making millions of dollars. And we think that is reality, which in actuality, that is not. Right. It does take time. It does take patience to be able to build, whether it's a business, whether it's an investment portfolio, whatever it may be. It does take time and it takes intentional time. Right. And that's also part of our partnership within our clients, because our clients don't have that time. Right. Our clients don't have the time to do all the research that us and our team do. Monitoring the different plans, monitoring business and different things like that. So again, that's part of the partnership in terms of, number one, letting them know that it does take time, but then also being able to do that for them and be that role in their lives.
And I think you said something about, the time, right? So I always tell everybody, and this is one thing I learned from one of my mentors years ago, is that you have to put a cost on your time. Everybody has a number. Every single person has a number, right? And you put that cost on your time. You say, do I have time to do this? Do I have time to sit here and research? If I don't, it's okay to delegate, because every great CEO, if you are the CEO of your life, of your brand, right? Because everybody's a brand. If you are the CEO of your brand, then how are you delegating that time so that you can spend what you're good at, right? What you're really, like, what your talent is. How can you spend that time more like productively instead of on something like, I don't understand. Like I said, that's not my ministry. That's not my ministry, right? But you convinced me, Tanisha, you need to diversify your portfolio, honey, and get into these stocks. But that's not my ministry, so I'm gonna delegate to somebody else, right? And that's the whole point. Understand and build, but build with a great team that you can trust fundamentally, Chris. Yes, trust. Understanding, that you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I mean, you want to have other people on your team that are going to be smarter than you. And that's y'all, right? Y'all are in that world and you're offering that level of research and understanding and knowledge. And then having a full team of insurance, somebody that's the insurance agent that's going to tell you exactly what you need to prevent when you were paying anything out of pocket, right? And then also a CPA. I think that's like a full circle, right? Full circle. I appreciate y'all, and before we go, can you give me 3 things, Chris and Derek, can you please give me top 3 things you would tell anybody, whether they're an athlete, entrepreneur, or both, brand, whatever it may be, whatever you're trying to do, give me 3 things, 3 tips that you would give to anybody that's trying to grow.
Let's see, you put us on the spot with that one.
Hey, you gotta be on your toes. You gotta be ready. When your calling comes, you gotta answer the call.
One, I mean, maybe we could bounce off of each other as we think about it, but one is be authentic in whatever it is that you're doing. Right, I think people can feel or sense when you're not being yourself. So I just think if in whatever you're doing, just figure out a way to do it as you and show up as yourself every day. That's one.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll throw one while you're kind of thinking through that. So one, I would kind of steal this from you, Tanisha, and really just what I think about. Number one, like you mentioned, hey, build a team, right? Great leaders delegate, right? We're not superhuman. We won't do all things, and if we do, some things will always lag. So if it is, hey, I want to be able to build this business, but I got to play on Sundays, you don't have time to build a business. So you need to have a business manager. You need to have an accountant, a financial advisor, and different folks. So the first thing I'd say is kind of piggyback in terms of building the team and being able to delegate some of those things.
One other thing that I think through, I guess, as a third would be just like understand why you want what you want, right? So I think, there are so many times where we want something, whether it's to be a billionaire or whatever the case may be. It's like, why do we want that? And I think when we take some time to reflect about that, we understand that oftentimes what we're actually chasing is something that we already have. So here's an example. Like, if we want so much more money, why do we want that? Well, maybe we want to have more freedom to be with our family, or we want more acceptance, or we want the feeling of, joy or peace, right? And so if we can understand why we want that, then we can really look around and say today, well, I really can spend more time with my family now. I can be more intentional on that, or I can be more intentional on practicing joy in what I have right now. And what you'll start to find is you'll even attract, if you start practicing or focusing on those emotions of why you want what you want in the first place, you'll start to attract the physical things like more money or more time, other things like that. So I just think about understand why you want what you actually want.
I love that.
The second thing I would say, which I think goes from number one of, yes, building the team and have experts on your side, but also be a learner, right? Read and get an understanding of what you're doing, get an understanding of your own finances. Yes, you'll have a financial advisor and they are the expert, but you still need to be reading. You still need to be learning, understanding. Same thing with your accountant, same thing with business partners or whatever it may be. So always be a learner and just be curious and don't just have a narrow focus in terms of what you do. So my second one, I would just say be a learner, if you will.
I like all of these, right? And to me, and I say that because it goes back to my word of 2022, the purpose. Operate in your own purpose and understand. You always learn, because obviously if you don't learn, then you're stagnant, right? And you are depending on others to tell you things. And I think, yes, you have people in your corner that are your team, but I always remember one thing that Oprah Winfrey said, that not one check goes out of her bank account without her seeing it. She signs every single check. that to me, like, you know how many checks she's probably signing in a day? But she said no one has a stamp of her name to where they are just stamping her name on a check. That to me is profound because, like, I'm not even on that type of status, but I'm like, I need to be watching my coins the same way that she's watching her coins. And I think that is where you're being in purpose, right? To be a billionaire, you know, if that's your end game, right? To be a billionaire, operate in a purpose. What is the purpose of this? So I appreciate you guys just coming today and sitting with me, talking with me, you know, virtually, you know, and giving some gems, right? Dropping some knowledge and just being real because that's what's important to me. I always say you can teach anybody anything, but you cannot teach somebody to have good character. That is like the fundamental basis of like being a good person and caring about your clients because that's what we are at DSG. We are a family. And anybody that I associate or affiliate with, you got to be a part of that family. You got to have the same level of character. You got to care about your clients. And I appreciate you guys so much. For showing that and then taking the time to just educate today. So, you know, anything else you want to drop before we leave today?
I mean, I don't know if this is if you wanted a third one, but I just think about, you know, you have your definition of success, right? I think everybody we in the world that we live in, so many other people define success for us, and I think it's just really important for you to define that for yourself. So that's the last thing I part with.
Yeah.
Derek, any final sayings before we get off?
No, I'll definitely second that. I think that's important. I'll maybe just say it in a different way as run your own race, right? Stay in your lane. And again, I go back to always, and I don't want to sound like the old grumpy guy complaining about social media, but you know, definitely folks see Instagram and folks and kind of feel discouraged and feel like they can't do things or they're not in a position that they are. Again, run your own race. Again, like Chris said, your own definition of success, and then you'll be able to get there.
And that's fair. And I think it's relevant in this time right now because people are killing themselves, you know, inside and beating themselves up. Like, oh my gosh, I don't have what such and such has. And it's like, you don't really know the grind that it took for this person to get here. Like, yes, you can see the celebration and all of the, you know, them reaping their rewards, but it could have taken them years to sow those seeds. And they could have sown those seeds for, you know, 10, 15 years, and you have no idea. So I think that is relevant, but it's not grumpy old guy, it's real, right? You are being real and saying, hey guys, like, please, like, yes, it's nice to create your list of wants based off of social media, but understanding fundamentally that social media is the highlight reel, right?
Right.
It's the good stuff.
Yeah.
It's all of the happy joy and not necessarily the grind to get there. So, but I thank you guys so much. You know, this is our DSG Power Summit series, and we're going to continue with these educating, dropping these gems. As my client said, Whitley Stewart, she's great. She's dropping gems all the time. That she does. But I appreciate you guys being a part of this today, and I hope to see you guys very, very soon. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.